And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon, and today I am talking with Stephen Pemberton. Stephen, thank you for being my guest and squeezing me into your calendar.
Michael, thank you so much for allowing me on this podcast, and thank you so much for being with me and through all the ups and downs and the different struggles we've had just to get on the show.
Yeah, it's crazy, but life happens, and that's okay. We are infinitely flexible. So it's all good. Stephen is I call him a serial entrepreneur. He's built a couple businesses and that ramped up to over 7 figures and things. And he does a lot of online stuff. He does some speaking things. He does lots of things. And we're going to touch on some of that, but we're also going to talk about the struggles of entrepreneurship, how he lost just about everything, how he's rebuilt, and how he's clung to his faith in Christ in doing all of that, because we all struggle at times and we carry a big, heavy load. So that's kind of where we're going on this interview. It's going to be really, really fun. So, Stephen, tell me, as we get into all this, how did you get doing what you do today?
That is an excellent question. To answer that in the short enough form where we can get to anything else on the show is in 2020, I felt like the Lord told me to quit my job of 5.5 years working in a corporate role where I had actually gone from entry-level employee with no school, no experience, and had grown to being the youngest manager over an entire location at the age of, I think I was 23. And I was the youngest in a Fortune 50 company. It's a Pepsi. So most people know who PepsiCo is. And so when he told me to quit that job, it was not like, yes, I'm so excited, I hate this job. It was, I had my whole identity in it. Yeah. So I quit the job and I didn't tell anyone. Well, I told my wife, but I did not tell any of my other family members because they did not understand. That's a whole separate podcast with them being in a stability mindset, which is fine. That was their mountaintop for them, which is beautiful. And I'm so thankful for everything that they did for me in that time growing up and even what they've done for me since then. But when I quit that job, that's when I went fully into business with my wife. She already had an Amazon store that had been pretty successful the year before, had done $1 million top line sales. But I always like to tell people the margins were terrible. The margins were 10%. So we made pretty much nothing. We had a partner in that business. So you split that 2 ways and you got cash reserves and all that stuff. Is I was making more working in my job. I was still the sole provider for the most part. So when I quit being a supply chain manager, I thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tighten up all the back end operations of this already thriving business. If I can just bump those margins to 30% instead of 10, we're going to be killing it. And very shortly after I quit that job, that business ends up getting shut down through Amazon. We used a faulty supplier who had all the paperwork, but it wasn't the right paperwork. We didn't know that. And by the time we found out, it was too late. So we end up, that business is 100K in debt. We trying to figure out what do we do next. We've got 2 months left until we're basically destitute. And we were blessed enough to be able to pivot into Facebook, Instagram, and Shopify, take the existing inventory we had. We had almost, I think, $35,000 worth of inventory, pivot that onto that marketplace. And we were able to, in the first month, make enough profit to stay home. Within the end of the year, we were able to help 33 underprivileged kids have Christmas. That's the end of 2020. Within 6 months of starting that business, we were doing $100,000 a month, more than I ever made working in corporate. By the end of 2021, we did over $1 million. We're able to help 137 underprivileged kids have Christmas through raising or donating about $40,000, $50,000. By finding all the kids in the school system in Tennessee or in the backwoods of Tennessee, raising the funds, buying all the stuff, wrapping it all, and delivering it all. And that's where we got into, we started helping other people. And that's what the big pivot was for us. It was either through virtual events, because we had already been running some ourselves. We took on some clients, helping them be able to run their virtual events. And then with the company Elevate on, that one is taking 6-figure direct-to-consumer brands and helping them scale up to 7 figures solely because that's how we got there. Like, we did it and we just turned around and said, who can we help? And that's the short story of it.
How cool. Thanks for your stick-to-itiveness to keep pivoting and making it happen, and to serve and to give back. I appreciate that, because that's my heart as well. Let's dive into your journey a little bit. And as you mentioned in through there, it hasn't just been a bed of roses. It hasn't been paved with concrete, right? Talk about some of the struggles and the internal struggles, not necessarily just the external things, but when Amazon sends you the email and says, oh, by the way, you're done. What's going on and how do you deal with it? Because business owners, we carry loads on our shoulders because we are, the buck stops with us, right? We have employees. Talk about that struggle. What happened? How do you get through it? Really?
That is, for me, I remember that time so vividly because when I quit that job and I come home to do this Amazon business, for me, my faith, my walk with Christ was not really good. If I'm honest, that I was still addicted to pornography, overeating, playing video games to cope with life, really.
Yeah.
And so I got plugged into a church pretty much immediately after I quit the job. I heard this series, it was called Crazy Faith, and I said, hey, I need that. So I just started listening to this church every single weekend. It was in a whole different part of the United States than we were in at the time. At that time, we were in East Texas. And honestly, that was what prepared me for whenever Amazon sent us that email. Because when I got the email, my wife says, hey, we can't do anything. I look at it and I say, oh, it's fine. It'll come back tomorrow. Like, I just had this faith that it would always come back. Now, granted, that opportunity did not come back for 8 months. So the thing is but the faith that I have, and I've actually used to struggle with not having the faith because I didn't have that personal relationship. But now because of the personal relationship, I was able to say, okay, if it's not this, he has something else. And we got blessed with something so much better. And it happened so much quicker because it wasn't what I expected. But I just had the faith to believe that he was going to do it. Now, granted, in the midst of having faith, there were still moments where I would see my wife just depressed in the corner crying. I would have to sit there and hold her, and I would have faith, but some of it was almost to the point where, for me personally, I would feel it and I was hopeful and expecting, but at the same time, I would be like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, where at any moment it could go sideways. I remember when we lost pretty much everything at a young age. I was 20 when we ended up losing everything, having to move into a basement. And in that time, I remember feeling like a failure and how much pain I was in and being depressed. And because I have a son too. So I understand what it feels like to be in those moments. So yes, absolutely. In that moment, if it hadn't been for the walk I had with Christ at that moment, I don't know how we would have been able to walk into the next opportunity that came along.
Yeah. And I love what you said there, because, and I just wrote this out, and as cliche as all get out, right? Closed doors lead to open windows or whatever. But so many times in what I've learned in my entrepreneurial journey is I'm heading in one direction and I'm pushing, trying to get a door open, and God brings business from a different direction, or he closes one door and I'm like, oh, but he's got things going on that I know nothing about. And it comes down to my faith. You're too young, but before Dave Ramsey, there was a guy named Larry Burkett who was on the radio.
I know who that is.
Do you really? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Larry's phrase that he would always say, like almost every radio program, he said, do you trust God, or do you just say you trust God? And man, that has just pounded me and kept me really anchored to Christ, to go, I say I trust God, but do I really, in those moments, to go, Lord, I don't have a clue where my next client's coming from.
Yep.
But I'm going to be faithful. Talk about that, because business owners are struggling.
Man, that's so good.
Yeah. Talk to me.
That's so good, especially right now. If I can be completely transparent with everyone listening, in the middle of with Elevatum, we are relaunching this. Like, this is a business that we had for a period of time, then we shut it down to focus on virtual events, and right now we're relaunching it because the Lord said, hey, you've been focusing on virtual events, but I told you to do the e-commerce stuff. And I had to go back and look at these visions that he had given me at the beginning of this year and a year ago to the day almost. And I look at them and I go, oh, shoot, it's not the business that I've been grinding and pounding my head against the wall. It's actually this other one. And exactly as you were saying, is in this moment, especially in this moment, it's easy to sit there and say, well, do I have faith, like you said, or do I just say I have faith? Like, do I really trust him, or do I just say I trust him? Because when you get into that mindset of you have to, I used to always hear this growing up, which is you have to walk what you talk. And so for me, growing up that way, and especially in this moment, is if I'm going to say I trust him, then that means I have to trust him, even in the midst of, well, we're in this middle of a launch. We got one client, but we really need 4. And it's okay, if we really need 4 to make this thing sustainable to grow, then do I trust him, or do I just say I trust him? And this is really key for people listening in a practical sense, is trust does not just mean sitting on the floor and saying, okay, what are we doing? That is great. Ask that question. It's like, okay, Father, what do you want me to do? And when he tells you to make cold calls, if he tells you to go to a networking event, if he tells you to just sit there and spend time with him, do whatever he tells you to do. Yeah. Because that is where the breakthroughs will come. And that's also really working your trust. Because if you sit there and you say, well, I'm just going to do 100 cold outreaches and 100 cold calls and I'm going to make it happen. If he tells you to be still, will you? because there's a reason he's telling you be still. If he tells you go to the mall that day, there's maybe a connection that he wants you to make at the mall. And that's where you have to be in tune and have that discernment. But that's, in the practical sense, is whatever he gives you, hold on to it and remember it, because I always used to hear this, his word will not return void.
Yep.
And we think of that as just the scriptures. But the thing is, if he gives you a word, if he speaks to you, he gives you a vision, he gives you a dream, hold on to that word, because that is the living word for you, what you need to be able to carry on and to have that trusting moment. So for me, is that practical sense of just sitting with him. What do you want me to do? Okay, you want me to do this in my business. You want me to do my marketing this way. You want me to hire this way. You want me to fire this way, or as I like to call it, release to the marketplace. Whatever it looks like, those things, I build my whole business around what he tells me to do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love and I shared this with somebody, and again, it's an old story. Somebody else did it about the faith thing. And it's not just sitting and listening, because that's important, but it's out doing. And, scripture tells us that God feeds and cares for the birds of the air, and he feeds them every day. Well, he's promised to do that, but the bird has to get out of the nest to go find the worm. And so I think there's value in being still and knowing I am God, and having your morning quiet time and resting and pondering and thinking and praying. And then putting your Bible away and saying, okay, God, you've given me abilities, talents, desires. I'm going to now be a good steward, because in Matthew 25, the parable of the stewards and the talents, two of those guys actually took what they were given and they went out and did something and grew what they had given, right? And that's what we're to do as entrepreneurs, is take what God's given you, find the direction and run, go, be a good steward, so that, and all right, so I never thought about this till it just connected with what you said with all your giving to kids. Those stewards, two of them came back and said, hey, I've doubled what you gave me. Yeah. And the master said, hey, well done. I got more for you to do. They didn't get a raise that I know of, right? They got more responsibility and a commendation, but that owner got more money. And so you've gotten more money and you're giving it away, which is, part of what God wants us to do to help others. So he continues to bless you. So it's not a prosperity gospel. It's no, I'm being faithful. And if God brings 5,000 or 50,000, it's God's money. What do you want me to do? Yeah.
What do you want me to do with it? I love that so much. And actually, so I was a part of this Bible study, and we were reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We were reading the Gospels. We read it. I think I've read it 5 times in the last 3 months. And there's a parable, because I love that parable with the 5 talents. But there's another parable in Luke that spoke to me even deeper, and it was the 10 talents. It's a parable of the 10 talents. And basically the same concept. The master gives the servants, I think it's 5, 2, and 1 as far as the talents. And then whenever he comes back, the 5 turned into 10, the 2 turned into 4, and the 1 was 1. But for the ones who doubled it, for the one who had 5 turned into 10, the one who had 2 turned into 4, he said, because you've been faithful with the 5 and turned it into 10, you will be a governor over 10 towns. And when I sit there and I thought of that, is we think of money as the end all be all. But realistically, if you look at it in the kingdom is we are supposed to steward our stuff, and multiplication is a thing, but also how do you govern people? Because the next elevation over money is people. That's why when I got to that mountaintop, the 7 figures a year, being able to go to Disney World and Disneyland, it was not just this is for me. It was who can I turn around and help? And honestly, through just giving away our best stuff the way that we could, there was a guy called me in October of 2022, and he said, hey, you don't know me at all. And he said, but I wanted to call you to say thank you. He said, because I watched you from a distance, and you shared everything that you guys did. And I turned my business from 0, where I was losing money every month, to making over $1 million a year because of what you shared. And the thing is that's who we're called to be, is yes, steward your money, grow your money, multiply it, but also how do you give back? How do you be a steward over those 10 towns?
Absolutely. It's really cool. So I you don't know this about us, but some of my audience does, because I share it once in a while. So we run on Profit First, right? Yeah. I don't know if you book Profit First, but read it. It's good. Apply it. And out of that, he says, put a category after gross revenues. The first category is profit for the business owner, and then you got all your other stuff. And so we did that. And then I went back to my team and my family, and I said, okay, I want another category right below profit to say giving first.
Wow.
So we take a percentage of every dollar that comes in, and it goes into a giving fund that we give generously through the business. As God prospers us, we give more money. And I just love that concept, because it aligns right with what you're doing, to go, I want to be a conduit of grace. I want to be like a big PVC pipe for God. And
Yes.
I don't want to be a 1/4 inch PVC pipe, man. I want to be a 3.5 foot one like they put on the side of the roads,
Yeah.
and just pour money through me. I want to earn, I told a guy recently, I want to earn tens of millions of dollars and die broke. That's a dream I've got, right? God, I just, that's where for me, the joy in life comes, is giving, using what I've been given, the talents and abilities and things, leveraging that to serve people, and then getting the rewards and giving it all away. That is so much fun.
I love that. That's so beautiful.
It's a lot of fun. It's sometimes I feel bad because I get to do this, right? But it's like, this is so much. But I want to encourage other entrepreneurs. I want to encourage them. That's one reason I love having you here, is breathe some life into entrepreneurs who might be struggling with just kind of mindset, thinking, lifting your eyes, setting our eyes on things above. As we are in the midst of a hard time, practical things. What would you say to an entrepreneur? Say, come on, let's go.
So, especially in the midst of a hard time, is don't focus. It's so easy to get trapped in where you're at. It's so easy to say, well, I've tried this, I've tried that, and I'm still stuck right here. But like you said, is lift your eyes up. So for those of you who are believers, put your eyes on Christ. When Peter was walking on the water, as long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was able to walk on the water. But anytime when he took his eyes off, he began to sink. And for those of you who may not be a believer, is when you began the business, why did you start it? What was your overarching reason for starting it? Maybe it was just to make more money. And if that is your reason, then that's okay for the moment. Just look up and say, you know what? I know that other people have done it. I've been listening to this podcast and I can hear that other people have done it. So that means that there's information that I'm lacking. If I can learn that information, I can go from being stuck and lift my eyes up and continue to walk forward. And just don't fall into the trap that where you are is all you can be. And let's say that you're saying, Stephen, you don't understand, my business has failed. I'm having to move back in with my parents, like everything, it's over. It's not over. You're still alive. You still have breath. And the thing is it doesn't matter if that venture failed. You are not a failure. Right. And I've walked through that so many times where there's businesses that have failed. In the moment, I felt like a failure because I attached my identity to it. So if you're in that spot, it doesn't matter if that business has so-called failed or gone under. That doesn't make you a failure. That doesn't mean that your purpose is done yet. If you still have breath, there's more for you. So just look up, because there's a pathway that's going to be revealed to you, and just walk that path out.
That's right. That's so good, man. That's so good. We're gonna pull it to a close there, because that I want you to go back and re-listen to what he just said, then go re-listen to the whole thing again, because we've dropped so many nuggets, and we want to. This episode specifically is about breathing life, and hope into you, because business can be tough. If it were easy, everybody would do it. And you talked about resilience in your life. Our company's been around 11 years. I've reiterated my company probably no less than a dozen times, trying to figure out what, and you just keep hitting doors, but it's the faith, it's the pursuit, and it's surrounding yourself with others who will lift you up. We're reading through Exodus as a family, and we just passed that part where Moses goes up on the mountain, and he's got her and Aaron or somebody holding his arms up, and they're winning the battle, but his arms come down. We need people around us. And Stephen Pemberton is a great guy to put around you. Stephen, you and I could talk for a really long time.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that. Where can people find out more about you, what you do, and who you are?
So a great place to find more about me is either my website, stephenpemberton.com. If you want to really find out more about me, also a great place to go to is Instagram. The reason why I said it that way is because the 2 pinned posts I have on there is us, my wife and I, with our testimony, walking through an affair and how we were able to walk through that. And the other one is me getting prayed over and basically this vision that was given to me. So that's a great place to go to learn more about who I am personally. Business-wise, elevatum.digital is a great way to learn more about that company. But stephenpemberton.com has all that stuff.
Awesome. We'll grab that and put that in the show notes. So if you're out mowing the yard or walking the dog or doing exercise, whatever, don't worry, I got you. Look in the show notes, stephenpemberton.com, and go learn more about him. He's a great entrepreneur, but he's also a great man of faith, and he's there to encourage you, to help you. And don't let I always tell people, don't dialogue with the devil. Don't listen to the whispering voices in your head that get us down. Get your head up, reach out to Stephen, check out his website, and just put yourself around good, faithful men like him. Stephen, thank you for being my guest today, brother.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me. It was incredible.